Hello, welcome back today to DevSecOps Talks with Paulina.
Yes.
Very low voice, Andrey.
Yeah. Got it this time. I was really quick, right? To say that this is the hardest part in IT. One, it's like naming thing. Two, saying your name in the right order in the podcast. The two hardest thing in IT. Okay.
And what are we talking today about?
I'm really looking forward to this episode because last time we talked about Case Monkey and like the pre-setup and why we do this, but this is going to be the practical talk, right? How you're going to teach us, Paulina, how you do Case Monkey, right?
Let's try and find out.
So, quick recap. Like, what is it and why should you do it? Like, 2 minutes. Explain, Paulina. What is it and why should you do Case Monkey?
So, not explicitly Chaos Monkey, but we're talking Chaos Engineering as we talked about last episode to figure out why, who, and where should it be used. So pretty much it came from experimenting on how to build confidence in the system with turbulent conditions in production or the environment close to production like. And today we want to find out when should we do it, what is needed to be do it, and how can you implement it in your own way, in your own system, not maybe across the entire system, but maybe in the smaller bits and pieces if you're not ready for it, and build your confidence with security and increase it. But first we need to find out if you are mature enough for it. So
yes. You said that many times, like, are the organization mature enough for it? So what's the prerequisites here for being ready for it?
I think we need to figure out, if we are ready for it and ask ourselves some questions for it, because you need to have basics covered before you go to more advanced stuff, which are chaos engineering here. So we have, okay, do you have a monitoring? Because if you don't monitor it, you cannot see the impact, even if you turn off a server or any other service. Is your system stable? If not, go back to basics. It's not something to you are not looking into more advanced stuff if you don't have basics. Is your management with you? Because if a business side of the business is not convinced to it, you might get in trouble as well. Or first, it would be good to convince them to be able to do it.
Yes.
And I think we have a few more questions like, okay, is your services high available?
Yes, and this is the thing that you want to test, right? The other things is like basic stuff, monitoring, the system is stable, everybody knows they're going, but this is really the things that you want to test with the chaos engineering, right?
Yeah, that's one of them. Like you wanna increase your capabilities and confidence in your security, and that your system doesn't go down.
Yeah.
Another thing you should think about is, do you have incident response mechanisms? Do you have them automated, or is it manual? For example, auto-scaling, circuit breakers, observability. If something goes down, does it gonna restart? Do you have some automation around it, or do you each time have manual action connected? Does information is getting automatically to people who should take care of it or not?
Yeah.
Do you conduct regular postmortems? If you don't learn from what chaos engineering is doing or any other stuff, it's useless. Yeah. So you need to figure out how to get better and how to implement it into real life as well. Do you have some metrics around it or not? SLAs, SLOs. We don't want to do firefighting to be able to get there. You want to have basics covered pretty much to get to the point where you can experiment more and have a bit of fun with it as well. to to increase it once you have, but you can do it in a more limited way. If you have too many no's to the questions we gave, or your assessment says, okay, we are not ready for it, one of the ideas is to do the game day. So you approach you take one of the idea and you try to implement it on one scenario and on the planned day. And you see if you can fix it or you can approach it, and primarily probably not on the production environment, but maybe on dev, or maybe you have test environment, or maybe you have experimental environment.
It feels like this is very structured, right? You have a good plan before you get started. I mean, from the word of it, like cares, it feels like you just throw it in. But here you have a pretty good plan, what you want to test and what kind of outcome you're looking for, more or less. Or is it more like you send it in and like we see what pops up, and then we try to solve it?
I think you need to have, how do you call it? What's the word?
Structure.
Not suspicion,
plan.
but
Okay,
no.
yeah. You need to have like a
assumption. What are you expecting from it?
Yeah.
Hypothesis. That's the word.
Probably where the postmortems might come in handy. If you do postmortems, then you will have a knowledge of previous issues, right?
Oh, yeah.
So you could then model your experiments based on the previous issues and say, like, okay, so we think we learned something out of that incident. We improved our system. So let's try to emulate the outage we had.
Yeah.
It might be possible, maybe not. It depends. Like, I think Paulina will get to the tools eventually. But that's how you test that you did your homework. Because I think that's what people ask a lot when they start to look at the chaos engineering, like, where do we start? What do we do? What kind of scenarios should we do? And like, if you do postmortems, I think that's where you can start to look for inspiration.
Yeah, that's one of the ideas, to get one of the inspiration from what already happened, which incidents. Another thing, you can check your defects and check what issues do you have happening there. That could be another idea what to come up with. Do you have any other ideas? What could we experiment?
I also like to verify things. I mean, we're saying that we have availability zone, like, oh, if something happened, then we will move over to the other zone, and we usually set up everything with the cloud by things like that. But do we really test it, right? Like shutting down the service in one zone, right? To verify things are working.
Yeah, so you could start with the simplest, right? So your database failover. So if you have, for instance, multi-AZ RDS, which is database deployed into multiple availability zones, you could trigger the database failover and see how your application reacts.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Then you can make it further. You can take it further by saying, okay, so like fault injection service allows you to shut down the availability zone, shut down the whole availability zone. So that will affect your application, your load balancing, and the database. See what happens. Then look at what your service is using, what services it's using. Consider which of those are the game stoppers for you. So for instance, if you can't write analytics to S3 or something, simulate S3 shutdown, see how your application behave. So you might have a hypothesis saying like, yeah, I think my application will do this. Like, I'm looking at code and I think it's going to do this. I'm looking at my Terraform, I think it's going to do this. But like, then you're actually shutting down the service, access to the service, for instance, or you introduce the network latency to the service and see what happens.
Yeah, you can also try to run out of the memory, see if your auto-scaling will work out. Same with CPU. For one service instead of for the whole system. So you want to if you don't feel safe with it, you wanna limit the scale where you're doing it and limit the scope which it can influence. So maybe you don't wanna start in production, but you wanna do it on dev staging. But the best results, at least based on research, are we wanna have environment as similar as possible to production. So maybe pre-prod. Or
what to highlight that there is actually a interesting point that Paulina is making, that you have your external dependencies and your internal dependencies, if you like, for the service. So the network, the external services, the services using access to them would be your external dependencies. That's usually more simple to test. But then, for instance, your Go routines, your memory consumption, your CPU load and stuff like that is a little bit harder to test. In my experience with AWS, I'm not sure how many services AWS allows you to test in this way, like simulating the memory spikes and stuff like that. But
you can do performance testing as well, yeah? Simulate a particular load to be able to check if your system can handle it with the particular settings which it has or auto-scaling which it has set up.
Yeah, so you would combine those two, right? So you would generate sufficient load, because most of the issues manifest under the load. They might not manifest themselves when there is a very little load. So you want to run your performance testing and then start switching over, messing with the database, messing with the network,
cool.
and stuff like that, because this is where the most interesting and harder to debug cases usually pop up.
Yeah.
So that would be really interesting. But then, as Paulina said, you need to have a monitoring in place so you can capture enough telemetry to figure out what happened, because you might get those funky cases where something goes wrong. You know that something went wrong, but you have no idea what.
Yeah.
And you have no data to debug it.
Yeah, logging and monitoring, that's the first place to try to figure out what went wrong. So if you want to play with it, you also need to enable it. Because I've seen some crazy savings on logging sometimes. If you want to run stuff like this, enable it even temporarily. If you don't want to have it permanently, but that's here comes cost versus security discussion. Where is the balance in it? As logging can be crazy expensive across the cloud.
Yeah. So, time for the tools. What can you use to get started? I think there are some tools that you can use.
This Pumba Docker container, we have a board in front of us, and like in the middle of the board there is a Pumba Docker container.
Yeah, what is it? Pumbaa from the Lion King, right? It's the pig, right? That's why I remember it. Like, and you already talked about AWS fault injector, but yeah, but it's Pumbaa, Paulina. Do you know what it is? You added it there, so I'm guessing.
Lion King, you don't remember? Of course, that one.
I don't remember them testing systems in the cartoon.
No. I think Paulina is searching for something now. Are you
Yeah, so other things that we have on the board while Paulina is searching is fault injection fees service in AWS that you mentioned.
Yeah.
There is, I think there are multiple SaaS offerings. I think Kremlin is one of those that we have on the board here that you could purchase and then instrument your application, instrument your platform to run that. The nice thing about those, they might be a little bit more sophisticated in a sense of reporting, and they might come with pre-configured experiments that you can run. So like fees, like I tried that, it's quite big. I mean, it's like a Lego. You could do quite a bit of stuff, but you have to build it yourself. Like that's like AWS. Those, like they call everyone builders. Like we give you our Levga blocks, go build something. So this is exactly like that. You need to pair it with other services, and you need to build like a dashboard and stuff. It will give you some ideas, but not a lot. There are some scenarios, but not a lot. And I think that specialized SaaS platforms will give you a higher level sophistication and potentially do some legwork for you. So you don't have to, get all the basics right. They will get you a head start with that. But I'm still would be very interested to know what is Pumbaa Docker container. If Paulina, you have something to share about that one.
Pumbaa is open source way for testing containers via chaos testing. So we can crash container application, emulate network failures. We can manipulate what's incoming, what's outgoing within our network, stress testing for CPU, memory, and so on. And create some chaos scenarios. You can find it on GitHub under Pumbaa name.
How do you configure them? Say that, do you have like containers here, then AWS Vault, that would be for AWS, then you have something for Kubernetes, and then you have Enterprise, and then the Chaos Monkey is probably easy too. You give him some like a restriction, like here's a Kubernetes cluster. Do you send it in there like do your stuff, or do you tell it something like only go for containers and networks and CPU, or like how do you do it practically? Like you run it from your
So you can set it up, for example, with various options in Pumbaa. You can set up scenario with how much latency you want, what is the source, what port, and so on. So you feed it with certain data, and that runs scenario for you.
Yeah, but they always built to be like randomized a little bit, right? Just give it like some context, and then they go in and like random pick targets and adding CPU memory, adding latency, killing, right? It's
I think
not like
it
it's not.
depends also on how advanced you wanna do it. There are different options when I went through certain documentations and done some research. So some are more randomized, some you can, I wanna crash this container with this latency
Okay.
I went through the README, and it looks like it's mostly for the local testing, but there is a Kubernetes support mentioned, so you can run it. It could mess with IP tables, and the networking stuff as well. Compose containers, but looks like it's mostly focused on the local testing plus some Kubernetes.
And Litmus is also one for Kubernetes. It's also open source.
What do you have experience with, Paulina? Have you used any of those?
Primarily fold injection, but can't really talk much about it as it was under NDAs. So
right. Yeah, I would say I also have most of the experience with fault injection, but rather limited. It's quite often I've been working with startups. Customers are not always reaching that sophistication while we're on engagement. So we're more focused on the basics, building basics.
Yeah.
I think some enterprises, they're not really focused on there either from my experience. Usually the biggest chaos, it's people which provide, someone is not aware of something and they change and suddenly it influences whole system.
Right.
That's nice. But isn't it something that you would do if you say that you're building like a high-end platform with multi-availability sort of things? This is like how you should test it to prove that it's working, right?
I think you have some, basics which you test automatically, and then you go further. So if you have resources, time for it, because usually question if customer wanna invest into it, because it's not always our decision on what do we spend time, even if you came up with something. But I think if you wanna, increase confidence and you're mature enough, that's the next step to go there. and you can then implement certain observability. So, have self-healing pipelines or self-healing system, which can do it at least some basic actions automatically, and human interaction is limited.
Actually, I forgot to mention another tool which is becoming very popular, which is ChatGPT. And people who just ask ChatGPT how to do some stuff, ChatGPT comes up with random crap, and people go and do that. And that's your chaos testing.
That's good testing, by the way. Yeah.
It's still called humans just with AI.
So,
while we're talking, I actually asked ChatGPT about all of that, and we are on point, I think, with what we're discussing. So he says Feast is a Chaos Monkey, Gremlin, Lithium's Chaos. Seems to be the most prominent names. So if you're researching, start with those.
Yeah.
And I think like the SaaS tools like Chaos, Gremlin and Lithium Chaos, they might actually use AWS Vault injection simulation under the hood.
I mean, now you set up like the prerequisite, like the prereq for having like monitoring all that stuff, and then you pick your environment. Prod is always good. That's the close or as close as prod as possible, and then you pick one of these tools, right? And the next part here is like adding it to the CI/CD chains, so it runs regular, right? Or we deploy, or when do you run this chaos monkey stuff? Once at that game day, or do you want to have it like run on regular basics? Like Monday, 8 o'clock, we always run the chaos monkey test. Or how do you schedule it? Right?
I think it depends what you are doing and what your system is doing. Because, for example, if you're hosting, I don't know, an emergency line, you cannot go down. So it depends what is your system, and you need to also agree on it with your business side of the organization. So you can do it on game day, you can do it within limited time space, or you can run it constantly. So it depends where you and how confident you are feeling with running it.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're running a high-end solution, like you need to run this to verify that it's working, right? Otherwise, you can't really be sure, right? If you didn't pick things up. Okay, so you scale it in that way. Do you also do it like after with certain like a release? You release something, and then in the process of testing, run some chaos monkey as well on that service. Have you seen something like that, like in the testing process?
I think that would be like one of the highest maturity parts of running the testing if you are on regular basis on already living system, because you when testing something what is already deployed. For example, system which is live, you can test, okay, is it proof for the incidents, or can it, okay, if the one part goes down, can it handle other part, or can it heal itself?
Yeah. Cool. So it's the last part. Okay, so this is running now. How? Yeah, Andrey.
Wanted to say that I'm not really sure that it makes sense running it in CI/CD, since it's not really regression testing you're doing there, right? And you need to have a way to reason about test result in an automated way if you want to run it in CI/CD, right? So you want to have those hypotheses defined, and then be able to reason about the test passing or failing, which is hard, right? So like if you're doing the load testing, for instance, you just bombard the service with HTTP requests, and you say, I want less than 1% to fail. And this is easy to measure, right? So you can automatically measure that. You can do performance test as part of CI/CD, no problemo. Here, there are things that can go sideways, and I'm not really sure that we are there with automation and have sufficient sophistication in monitoring to be able to reason about the experiment results on automated manner.
I think it depends what you're doing. If you're doing in how big scope you want to do it, because if you as we're talking, you limit to 1, 2, or 3 scenarios. You can, I don't know, you can catch if the server is down, or you can catch if the from logs if the database don't have connection.
Yeah, but are the tests always the same? That's the thing, right? If you run it and you run a chaos test and you run it does something, you don't know what it does, and you pass, right? It doesn't mean
but
that
you can give it some frameworks within it runs, so it might be okay. I bombard database with different performance or in different hours or something, so you can give it a limits within it can run. So when you know what you're looking for from the logs, and you can get an automatic action which gonna get as a follow-up to it.
That's what I'm saying. Like with performance testing, you get the result from the same tool you're testing, right? So like the tool that sends requests can count the success request and unsuccessful request and give you a result in the end, like in a JSON format that you can pass and then pass that result to the CI/CD. So CI/CD will give you a verdict, fail or pass. You don't want to be in between, because then I would argue that's a shitty CI/CD if it's like giving you in between state. But with chaos engineering, it's different. So you would trigger your tool to simulate network outage, but then you need to look at a different place, a particular couple of places, for the signs of trouble. See what I mean? So you need to combine data from multiple sources and be able to reason about the correlations between this data, which is a little bit harder to do automatically.
Yeah, I agree it's harder, and I agree it's not something what you see very common, but I think, also with AI emerging and getting, some at least basic reasoning or, some internal AI models, we can start getting there, and in some use cases, or some also, I think in the simpler one, you can even automate it without AI.
Another place where I think it would be super useful, which is not CI/CD, but actually doing that on a regular basis. So you might need to have a requirement if you're going through any kind of compliance to do disaster recovery planning.
Yes.
Right? So your business continuity stuff. This is where it's perfect, because you run experiment that gives you some kind of report, which could be your artifact to show auditors that you actually did disaster recovery planning. So this is a perfect fit. And if you need to argue to the business, everyone like reliability, recovery, everyone likes that stuff. But there is also compliance, and that you might actually have more success getting the approval from business, saying like, we run this stuff and we get the reports, and that's good for our compliance. You can check it out of the box. The managers will love it. And start with the simple stuff, like for instance, or a simple stuff. I wanted to say like do the regional switching, which is not really
That's
simple.
not the simplest one.
No. The architecture needs to be on a certain level of sophistication to get there. But start with the simple stuff like AZ. Like I think AZ shutdown is the best. It's the easiest to recover. Most of the most of the systems I've seen, unless they're like, the bare bones MVPs that are trying to save money by running on a single light sales server, they would have the AZ fail consideration built into their design. So they would run load balancer, they would run after scaling group or some kind of container systems that is distributed between AZs. The databases will have the multi-AZ. So most probably your system is ready to survive. If your system is not ready to survive multi-AZ, the availability zone outage, forget about chaos testing. Go fix your technology. But this is where I would start. AZ, then maybe 2 AZs, see what happens.
If you're in cloud.
If you're in cloud. If you are not in cloud,
go and pull some cables.
Forget about chaos engineering. Go get your stuff to the cloud. We talk later, like in a year or two. And if you're not in the cloud, it's happening to you all the time. Your hardware fail all the time. So you're kind of already doing it.
Yeah.
Try to
It's
turn
all-
off your server and see if your system is
Hire a cleaner. That will be your chaos engineering. She will pull the cables on a random basis
in your data center.
in your data center under your table.
Yeah, that's also chaos.
It is.
The life is chaotic enough. Yeah.
But the most important, whatever you try to test, learn from it and implement it and document it. And talk to your business also about what you learned and what you spend your time on. Then they're gonna be more eager to you investing more time into chaos engineering or whatever testing you're doing. Because as we know, some business doesn't like wasting time on testing because they always want new features.
Yeah.
And another idea to drop in your head for discussion is like who should do it? Like not what kind of company should be doing, but what kind of a role in the team should be more focused on that. And I have an idea that, well, like what I do usually, it falls under like the platform engineering. Usually people say that. So like we do a lot of Terraform, containers, CI/CD. Some other people might call it DevOps, whatever. But basically, we're building systems and providing the tools for developers to deploy and run the containers. But there are also SREs who are less focused on the building system as is, but more focused on observing the system and making it more reliable. And I think that's that kind of role that might be more concerned with chaos testing than the typical builder type of person. That is my personal opinion here.
Yeah, but not in every organization you have division on SRE, platform, DevOps, and so on. Very often you have one big team which do all of this under whatever name. I've been in the teams which were called all of it, including infrastructure, DevOps, automation, systems engineer, and other. And they pretty much in most organizations you have all of these bundled in one team.
But don't you see this coming more and more? I mean, in security, you test your security, right? You have tools that scan it for vulnerabilities. You have like pen tested people go in and try to hack it, right? You test your security. But in resilience, right? Verify that your system is up and running. There's no like, and
very similar to red and blue teaming, right? Like you have in security, red and blue teams, the teams that defend, the teams that trying to get in. The same here. You have the teams that builds and then the team that tests.
And it's coming more and more like availability, like things need to be up, right? You need to be able to prove it. And with security, you do like pen test, verify, okay, but we did a test here. But have you tested that the system always will be up? And is it like this way of testing the way to verify that? Right? Yeah. Okay, people, 30 minutes and the last words.
Running out of voice as well. So.
Yeah.
I knew you would warm up.
If it did warm up, he will say like, no, I'm not gonna speak at all here. But you went like dark and then get a little bit better actually in the end, right?
I didn't for first 5 minutes.
Well, so here we're finishing our journey with chaos engineering for now. If you want to learn more about basics, go back to part 1. If you want to learn more about practice, release in this one and check next ones about what's coming.
Sounds good. And with that, I will press stop here. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye-bye.
You have been listened to DevSecOps Talks with Mattias, Andrey, and Paulina. For notes and information, please visit devsecops.fm. Thanks for tuning in.